Let your customers help you price.
Coffee's for closers only.
So we've established my proposal is sound in principle. Now we're just haggling over price.
Let's see how much we're going for on eBay.
Man, it's the same as Dunkin' Donuts. Costs 15 times the price.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Jennings Executive Search. I had a great conversation with John Jennings about the skills needed in different pricing roles. He and I think a lot alike. If you're looking for a new pricing role, or if you're trying to hire just the right pricing person, I strongly suggest you reach out to Jennings Executive Search. They specialize in placing pricing people. Say that 3 times fast. Welcome to Impact Pricing, the podcast where we discuss pricing, value, and the sales-driven relationship between them. I'm Mark Stiving, and I run boot camps to help companies get paid more. Our guest today is Scott Kelly. Here are 3 things you want to know about Scott before we start. He is the founder and CEO of Blackdog Venture Partners. He's been doing that for 25 years. He's the host of VC Fast Pitch, and he has about a dozen companies with the name Blackdog in them. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, before I ask my first question, I'd have to ask, what's Blackdog? I assume you had a black dog at one point in time?
I did. And, when I started the company actually in 2000, I was originally going to name it Zachary International after my newly born son. And it turned out there was a trademark issue. So I was at the attorney. We were just going through names, and I had a black lab named Mike, and we landed on Blackdog. And I wish it was a more exciting story. I get, the Led Zeppelin reference. I get all the other references, but that's the story. And honestly, I've had 4 black dogs since then, and I'll probably get another black dog next. So,
well, now they have to be black.
They do. Absolutely.
Right. So, okay. How did you get into pricing? By the way, I know you're not really a pricing guy, but let's call it. Let's pretend like you are.
Sure. Well, pricing, is so important. I work with literally hundreds of entrepreneurs at a time and thousands over my career. And, my primary role has been to help them raise capital. But when they're talking to investors, the investors want to know how they're going to maximize profits. And how you maximize profits is maximizing the price for your product and service is one of those tools. And, I have found, like yourself, many times that everyone assumes that the lowest price is the best opportunity. But, selling on pricing is a bad thing for both sides of the transaction.
I have to say that I almost never work with companies who want to be the lowest price.
Agreed.
It just makes no sense.
Well, the reality is you're not going to provide the level of service because you need to maximize profit. And that's the thing. At the end of the day, you want to provide enough value so they stick around at a price that can keep you sticking around.
Yeah. Okay. So you've seen hundreds, thousands of different companies. What pricing models to get investors excited?
Investors really like what's called reoccurring revenue. Many years ago, you would go to, a computer store and buy software. And then the whole concept of subscription and reoccurring revenue became the norm. And that's really what a lot of investors are looking at. They want consistent, quantifiable revenue because that's how they can mitigate their risk. So again, the best pricing model that we use primarily for SaaS companies and other member-based companies is a subscription-based pricing model.
Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. Do you differentiate? I often say the words recurring and reoccurring, meaning 2 different things. So recurring is usually a SaaS model, and reoccurring is when I tend to sell the same thing over and over again to a set of customers. So Uber would be reoccurring.
Sure.
And LinkedIn, if I was paying LinkedIn, would be recurring.
Well, I would tell you on Uber, I'm an Uber One member, so they're also getting reoccurring revenue from me on the membership. So,
yeah, they are. There's no doubt. So, what are you seeing in the world of AI today? Are most of your SaaS companies playing in AI, and how are they doing pricing models for that?
Well, they absolutely have to. The reality is we're still, although AI has been around for a while, it's only been famous for a short while. but it's not going anywhere for a long while. And I think the idea is that with SaaS companies, they've got to try to find more efficient ways to, price how to get their product to market. And so from that standpoint, AI is really has the ability to replace a lot of the folks they would normally hire. So from the production side, it's definitely affecting, the pricing to get their product and software out to market. But on the reverse, AI is playing into the price that they pay for marketing, the price they pay to generate content, to build branding, the price. Really, every aspect of their business is going to be impacted. More or less every business going forward.
Yeah, so we often the way I think about AI is I think of it in two different sides of the coin today. This is just from my perspective, right? I've got how do I use AI while I'm doing pricing?
Mhm.
And the other is how do I price products that have AI in them? And it's two very different thought processes. Right?
Agreed.
So AI is disrupting a ton of things.
It is. The reality is you can use AI to get better data. Honestly, you can use AI to determine, what the market penetration is at certain price points. A lot of the market research going into pricing a product can be implemented through AI, and many companies are already doing that.
Yeah, so it's actually funny because when you go to the big pricing companies, the big pricing software companies, they're absolutely using AI. They're pulling in tons of data and they're predicting what someone willing to pay, and that's phenomenal. But I think most of my clients, most of the people I work with are smaller, mid-sized businesses. They don't have all this data. They can't use AI for the data crunching and predicting of pricing. But we can use it to do research, right? How do buyers make decisions? What's important to buyers? Where's the value to what we're selling? I do it that way all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. The reality is some of these smaller businesses, when they can determine, very quickly using AI when they're doing meta ads, how to price their offering, and they can find in real time, what kind of click through rates and they're getting and be able to adjust accordingly. So yeah, they don't necessarily yet have direct access to data. That's going to change over time. I think much like the internet, several decades ago, AI is going to democratize some aspects of running a business.
Yeah. So, so I want to jump back to the other half of pricing of AI because that's the side that I focus on way more,
Mhm.
and that is how do I price products that have AI in them? Now, I certainly have opinions, and I'll toss them out to you, but just let me give you the softball first.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts in that world?
Well, in that world, I think it's this is where the pricing versus value comes in. I think AI is a tool, but you need to make sure you have the right carpenter or the right instrument and the right professional planned instrument. So I think how you price that is the value add that you bring to this tool that's AI.
I think that's a phenomenal example, metaphor for this. Too many people think using the words AI is value,
Right.
and it's really not. It is just a tool. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. The reality is that there's a lot of tools out there and a lot of people can use them for good and use them poorly. And that's really where value comes in versus pricing.
yeah. How do you think of value when you're working with your clients, your potential um, companies? I guess I'll say.
Mhm.
How do you help them determine what is value? How much is someone willing to pay for their product?
It really, the short answer is whatever the market will bear, but obviously that's not really, true going forward. Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to the other things that you get besides a simple product or simple software. You can you can go offshore and hire someone to do some great design work or some great coding, but what if they're not available all the time? What if they don't get the support that you need? I think it's those value adds that really allow to have a little more elasticity, when it comes to your pricing.
Yeah, so I'll certainly agree that differentiation is key, right? Differentiation is what allows us to charge a higher price than our competitors do. But if you're working with a new entrepreneur or an owner, how do you convince them, hey, you need to go raise prices, or hey, you need to pick a new market segment where there's a higher willingness to pay in this segment than most of the customers you're dealing with?
Well, a lot of the entrepreneurs, we're obviously helping them to maximize profit for the sake of the business, but we're also encouraging them to increase margins and profits for the sake of investors. Because investors are going to look at those metrics. They're going to look at your profits, your margin, your cost of client acquisition, all of those things. So I tell entrepreneurs, especially if you're raising money, you've got to be sensitive to making sure you're generating enough margin and at enough volume to be an effective investment. And then from a business standpoint, it's yeah, you just have to be cognizant of what the market is. You listen to your customer. That's really what it comes down to. I think a lot of times, a lot of entrepreneurs will just come out with what they think is the best pricing of a product and don't listen to their customers. And I think there's a lot of opportunities before you make the sale and post sale, to get that feedback and adjust accordingly.
Yeah, I think what happens, I'm totally with you that they don't listen to their customers. But I think what happens is um, you don't really have the ability to come up with a perfect price. In fact, you can never have a perfect price. It just doesn't exist. You can't find it. But they find something that works and then they just stick with it. Whereas in truth, there are people out there that just love what you do, and they would pay you a lot more if you could find them and figure out how to message to them and segment them away from the rest of the market segment.
I agree 100%. My business, obviously, we work with a lot of accelerators and investors and entrepreneurs, but even my own business, we have a whole model surrounding putting the right resources in front of entrepreneurs. And it's like anything else, they're going to buy from somebody else if you don't present the opportunity to them. And so in my newsletter, we create partnerships with other services and service providers and get special pricing that would be of interest to the entrepreneurs. And in that way, I've been able to take a single product or single service customer and turn them into a multiple, service or product customer. And that obviously increases revenue, but it also increases the life of the client.
Yeah. So when do you bring up pricing with an entrepreneur you're coaching or a new company that you're coaching?
I bring it up almost immediately because the reality is it really sets the tone, and I don't shy away from it. And I tell everybody if you feel that you're worth that value, don't shy away from that. So many times, if I'll get an inbound inquiry, I will tell them exactly this is what it's going to cost, and this is what I'm going to do. And I keep it very simple. I say, if you would like to follow up and learn more how I can, justify that cost, let me know. So I'm from New York. I'm a bit of an A-type personality, and I've been in sales and trained thousands of salespeople. So I don't shy away from that.
Yeah, I guess what I actually meant though was when you're in the middle of coaching an entrepreneur, when do you tell them, "Hey, let's talk about price. Hey, let's figure out pricing."
Okay, for their product, yeah, it's fairly early. I think they need to know as soon as possible what their top line is going to be so they can begin to determine their bottom line. So it's very early in the process. So, they've got to research their competitors. They have to decide where they're going to be on this spectrum of pricing versus value and make a decision on that because again, you have to work those numbers at the same time you're working the expense line, determine what kind of profit, what kind of margins you have. So it's pretty early in the process.
Yeah. So what kind of pricing mistakes do you see entrepreneurs making?
I think probably the two primary mistakes is pricing too low and pricing too high. Um, but that's the simple answer. But I think more importantly is not getting enough data and not listening to their customers before they determine pricing. We've come across many opportunities where someone, you know, did not have the ability to pay for a product, but if you could find a solution to pay for that product, maybe you offer, in-house financing or have a financing partner. Maybe you offer terms. Maybe you carry the cost yourself. Um, but I think that the main thing is not really understanding not being in the strike zone. At least you're not, like you said, you're not going to be perfect. Your price isn't going to be for everybody, but you should be, at least do enough empirical research and listen to your customers enough to know a price that is won't make them jump for joy, but will make them run out the door.
Right, right. So I have to say that when you said pricing too high or pricing too low, here's what came into my mind. I never see companies that price too high. Now, that could be because they die quickly. I don't know. But I see tons of companies that price too low, right? Almost every company.
Right.
And especially if you're thinking a solopreneur, they're putting a number on themselves and their self-confidence just isn't where it needs to be able to say, yeah, I'm worth this price.
Right.
Right.
Well,
So I find that a lot.
Yeah, I think part of that's elasticity. You have to realize that, you could charge too much and just lose clients and lose opportunities. Again, I don't recommend a lot of discounting. Obviously I don't do a lot of promotional things. I tell people I've been doing this for 30 years and, I've raised $5 billion. I've taken 3 of my own companies public. I think I have enough skill, experience, and background to, justify it. And I think even for a new entrepreneur, when I was a 22-year-old retail stockbroker fresh out of college, what I couldn't sell in experience, I sold in enthusiasm. So.
Mhm. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. So one of the things you've said, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 times since we've been talking is listen to your customers.
That's
I
paramount.
dearly love that concept. How do you teach people to do that? You can't just say, go listen to your customers because people can't listen.
I think it comes down to establishing a customer as a relationship, not a transaction. You have to spend time getting to know them. And I was fortunate very early in my career to learn how to establish rapport, learn other things about my customers and my clients. So I think it's a process of establishing a relationship versus a transaction. But I think also, it's important to continually experiment. Experiment with a pricing model. Go from, you see it all the time. There's an opportunity to buy something on a monthly basis, test it out if they want to pay on a yearly basis and what that discount might look like. If they want a premium service, if they want more time, if there's an add-on that you can provide, um, and simply ask, what can I do better or what else do you need?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say that listening part is really important. So here's the hint that I always give people, and you can tell me if you like this or not. But I think that we serve our customers by solving their problems. And so what we always have to do is be thinking, what problems do you have? And what results are you hoping for when I can solve those or when they get solved? And I think if we can focus entrepreneurs or business people on problems and results, then everything else just happens.
It's interesting you say that because our unadvertised motto is that we solve problems and create opportunities. So absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So excellent. Hey, Scott, this is fun, but I'm going to start to wrap this up. Can I ask you the final question? What is one piece of pricing advice you would give our listeners that you think could have a big impact on their business?
Let your customers help you price.
Nice, nice, nice. Scott, thank you so much for your time today. If anybody wants to contact you, how can they do that?
They can reach me on LinkedIn, on my website, blackdogventurepartners.com, or they can email me at scott@blackdogvp.com.
Perfect. To our listeners, thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this, would you please leave us a rating and a review? And finally, if you have any questions or comments about the podcast, or if your company wants to get paid more for the value you deliver, email me, mark@impactpricing.com. Now, go make an impact. Thanks again to Jennings Executive Search for sponsoring our podcast. If you're looking to hire someone in pricing, I suggest you contact someone who knows pricing people. Contact Jennings Executive Search.